Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This sort of occasion, I feel I should quit while I'm ahead. But anyway, we're going to look at the upstream, downstream impacts after the consideration of the coast. And this photograph was taken in Seaside, where the sewage treatment works was in danger of falling into the estuary of the Nicanicum River until we got there. So this is going to be the outline of my talk. We'll start with what's the problem, then go on to the RBP strategic plan, adaptive management and water augmentation, source control examples, our private contributions, and future water augmentation strategy. So first of all, what is the problem? Can we have a show of hands who claims to know something about hydrology? Okay. So this is kind of important. So in a natural catchment, and I think the only problem with this picture is that it should be 100% canopy cover, but there is a vast preponderance of surface, where's my little red thing? Here we are. Interflow and base flow. In other words, the water gets hung up on the canopy. Between 30 and 50% of annual precipitation is held in the canopy. The surface flow is minuscule, and if there's a very deep duff layer, it's probably zero, except in the worst storms. So storage is what the salmon and all the flora and fauna of our beautiful streams have come to rely on. So what have we done? We've cut down the trees, very often replace them with impermeable surfaces, and so now the situation is reversed. We have high surface flow, very low interflow and base flow, resulting in runoff. So that is the paradigm that we've conventionally had to become used to, and it was very usefully expressed by Terra Research in this slide, which is not very complicated. In this area, we look at that forest. Can you see the red pointer at the back? Okay. So on the extreme left here, this is the native forest, preferably untouched. And then we move through pasture, lawn, rural forest, rural field, and then various densities of subdivisions till we get to fully urban. And here we're looking at the annual precipitation, in this case 40 inches, that doesn't really matter. But in the natural condition, we have 35 or so percent groundwater, a certain 10% or 15% of interflow, and the rest evapotranspiration. As we gradually move towards the various levels of development, we notice that surface water runoff starts here at our lawn level and gradually increases through densities of urbanization until now we have more or less, 85% surface runoff in fully urban areas. In other words, no recharge of groundwater at all. So there's a vast change in the basin hydrology regime, increasing frequency and severity of flood and drought. Oh, I thought I got rid of that. Darn it, sorry about that. Increased storm flows. Oh well. Decreased lag time for runoff. More runoff and less infiltration. Decreased groundwater recharge, and therefore reduced summer base flow in streams. And that, ladies and gentlemen, in a nutshell, is the problem we face. It's the legacy that we have inherited from those who thought they were doing the right thing, I guess, but weren't. Oh well. So more runoff changes water quality. And I won't go through all these, but I'm sure you're fairly familiar with them. There's water temperature and fine sediment and nutrients, the ones we're usually dealing with, but there are others as well, leading to an overall degradation in water quality. And Christine mentioned geomorphology. changes in channel morphology, channel enlargement, so erosion, loss of the pool river characteristics, and in the case of the estuary, loss of those big pools, stream bed scour and aggradation, tributary channel incision, because as the main channel goes down, the tributaries become hung tributaries and start to incise themselves. This is incidentally how, of course, the Grand Canyon was developed, so it's nothing new, really. Stream bank erosion, and this is the kicker here, is the loss of river floodplain connectivity. Once you've lost that connectivity, those flows that used to be spread on the floodplain are now directed back into the channel. Guess what that does to the erosion power of the channel? Yes, so you get more erosion, which means you get even less storage on the floodplain, and so on. It's an example of a vicious cycle, and therefore stream channel instability. So summarizing, cumulative effects of land use, rural land misuse and urbanization have degraded streams and ecological integrity. And this begins pretty much as soon as the development increases. Some work at the University of Washington showed that only 5% of development caused very significant change in salmonid health and well-being. And the physical effects of increasing runoff are actually more important than pollutants, which tend to be in floodwaters and diluted, of course. So here's a tongue-in-cheek statement. Current management strategies have not been totally effective. Oh dear. And this is not just in America, ladies and gentlemen, it's around the world, so don't feel, you're being pilloried. So what's our Rogue Basin Partnership Strategic Plan have to say about this? Okay, so these are the predicted changes in the channel-forming flows, 1.5-year return period flows, and essentially, come back. Essentially, we're looking at the great difference between the headwaters up here and the middle levels and on the coast. I can't read these numbers from here, and I don't remember them off the top of my head, but this plan will be out shortly, and it really emphasizes or underlines what we've already been told today, that there will be an increase in summer temperatures and actually an increase in precipitation in the headwaters of the watershed. So this is the predicted changes in mean summer flows by 2040, and you'll see that in the headwaters there is a very large diminution in flow, and this is reflected further downstream. So again, part of the Rogue Basin Partnership, Adaptive Management Water Augmentation. I'm glad some of my colleagues on the board are here today. This is its first outing, I think. The idea is that we look to water augmentation. I used to call this stormwater management, and now I think augmentation is a much broader term, much more umbrella term. Water hydration, upland recharge, I'll go into in a moment, and then water conservation, reducing consumptive use, voluntary urban water use reductions, as we heard from Ashland, isn't that marvelous? Small-scale irrigation efficiency projects, which you also heard about. And then underneath that, ag infrastructure improvements, water rights, leasing, transfer for in-stream use. Improve big irrigation water management and reduce out-of-stream diversions, pipe irrigation ditches. We've heard about whys and so on. So I'd like to just reinforce that. But let's return to the water hydration upland recharge. What we're trying to do, if this is the natural hydrograph in white, undeveloped, in a developed area, it becomes very spiky and much more volume, i.e., much more greater discharge under the curve. And so we're trying to bring it back in the old days with just storage, we just had best management practices, which didn't actually, they attenuated the flows, they didn't actually reduce them. So rural source control, limit and reduce water imperviousness, preserve basin forested area, maintain wide buffers, riparian buffers, ONC lands, people, pay attention. Minimize riparian encroachment, maximize riparian corridor continuity, manage for mature riparian forest, yes please. Restrict development in floodplain area, protect headwater and riparian wetlands. And lastly, increase the topsoil organic content. It was shown that an increase of 1% led to an increase in water retention of 27,000 gallons per acre, which stunned me a bit. So here's a plug for biochar. Urban source control, using best management practices to restore natural hydrology, allow no stormwater inputs to the stream channel without quality and quantity control. It's a very powerful statement. Retrofit BMP programs, which used to be just for water quantity, for water quality as well. We know how to do all this. Encourage use of on-site infiltration technology, green roofs, rain gardens, bioswales, and so on. So source control examples, whipping through these, extensive roof gardens. This is in Portland on Hamilton Building, roof garden, a water garden at the BES laboratories. Here's the difference between impermeable paving in a parking lot and permeable paving. Much nicer to walk through in a storm. Over wide streets like this give a possibility for cycle paths and bioswales. And here's an infiltrating street in Lake Oswego beside the road. And here's a street that I would really like to see, just wide enough not to cause too many idiots to speed, and with bioswales on either side. And here's a bioswale from Sandy going out to Mount Hood. And here's retrofitting a previous storage lagoon with vegetation for water quality benefits. So our private contributions, Christine and I were kind of instrumental in bringing a lifeless ditch shown here outside our Evergreen Elementary School, involving the kids. This is now an outside classroom, and Christine taught them, the green bits of a plant go up and the roots go down. Surprising, yes. So, and so they had a whale of a time, not once, but several times, to plant up. And here it is functioning in the rain. So that's a success story, thanks to the Ford Family Institute. This is our Cohort 2 project, for those who know that. When we lived in Sandy on our first farm, we did a considerable amount of rainwater harvesting. These are, that's a 12 and a 10, a 12 and an 8 1,000-gallon tank. On the other side, there were two 10s. And then downstream, down the hill, I could also fill up these two 10,000-gallon tanks. There's some prices, 2003, $9,000 for 20,000 gallons. And there's a 20,000-gallon tank. Scott Lazenby, this city manager, he's now moved to Lake Oswego, he used to say to me, John, every time I pass your farm, it looks more and more like an oil refinery. And that was because we wanted to grow our own vegetables on a command area with raised beds, and this is the irrigation being laid out. And there's a Happy Me gardening. We also raised alpacas. This is the finest Surrey male ever to come to this country. His name was Bruxo of sacred memory. Future water augmentation strategy. Restore natural hydrology. That's the basic lesson. It's a question of how we do it. Well, we have to integrate it into site planning and design. Local authorities make decisions on whether a development should go somewhere simply on demographics and transportation. Then you have to get permits for these other things. Well, yesterday. That's how we got into this mess. Protect natural resources, wetlands, oak savanna, intact forests. Rely on natural processes such as biofiltration. Increase organic matter in the soil, biochar again. Treat stormwater close to its origin, source control. Minimize collection, curb and gutter, and conveyance. We have curb and gutter in our redundant floodplains in Cave Junction. It's ridiculous. Huge expense for it, and quite the wrong thing to do. So the new goal, I challenge you all, is to eliminate surface water outfalls. No outfalls, no problem. And tomorrow, I tried to get the resilience matrix we produced onto a slide. It just would not go. But I'm going to produce some paper copies tomorrow for the water and the farming agriculture breakouts. Thank you very much.